This video is for the knowledge organizer on inverse functions. What I would like you to do is watch this video, use it to work through the examples, try the questions from the knowledge organizer, and then complete any maths watchwork set. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at working out the inverse of a function. The inverse of a function reverses the effect of a function. So if you imagine, say you were to multiply 2 by 3, you would get 6. If you were trying to go the other way back, you would get divide by 3 and you'd end back up at 2. So that's what we will be looking to do when we have the inverse of function. The inverse of a function is written with this notation, which is f minus 1 of x. Okay. Now, we've going to look at finding the inverse of the function gx, which is 7x plus 1 all over 2. Now I'm going to look at doing this in two different ways. The first way is I've talked about function notation here when I was using my example in the basic premise of what we were doing. I'm going to do the same thing here. So we've got times by 7, add 1. And then we divide by 2, and that's what happens. X times by 7 gives us 7x, add 1 gives us 7x add 1, divide by 2, and we get 7x plus 1 all over 2. And that's how the basic premise of how we've got this function. So it works similar to what we've done up here. We can work our way back. So here we say put x in. If we divide x by 2, you get, oh sorry, my apologies, we want to do the inverse, we times by 2. So if we times x by 2, we get 2x. We then want to take away 1, so we get 2x. Take away 1 at this point, and then we're going to do the inverse. We divide by 7, and that gives us 2x minus 1 all over 7. So we can write the inverse of this as being g minus 1 of x, because the function, the letter in the function is g, equals 2x minus 1 all over 7. And that works quite nicely. So you draw yourself a function notation, you work your way through, you start with x and you go backwards doing the inverse functions. You come out with what you get, and you get g minus 1 of x. Now, there is another way to do this, and using algebra. Similar to how we would rearrange equations, and I'm going to talk to you about that now, okay? Because not every function can be represented by a simple flow diagram, so some of them can be quite difficult to do, especially when you have x's on both sides, more than one x, sorry, in your function. So it's better to be able to learn both ways to do this. So what we do is, instead of writing gx, we've got our gx equals 7x plus 1 all over 2. We now swap that for y, okay? And we get 7x plus 1 all over 2. Now we're going to rearrange this. So what I mean is we're going to make x the subject of the formula. So we times by 2. And if I times by 2, I get 2y equals 7x plus 1. I'm going to take away from 1. And I get 2y minus 1 equals 7x. Then I'm going to divide through by 7, and I get 2y minus 1 all over 7 equals x. If you think back to what we've just done with our flow diagram, you'll notice that the inverse operations we've done in the same order, and we've got a similar thing here. All we've got here is, in our one here, we've got y instead of x. So what we do is we take this value, okay, of 2y minus 1 all over 7 equals x, and what we do is we swap x and y, okay, and what we get is we get 2x minus 1 all over 7 equals y. Now, at this point in time, at the beginning, we wrote gx as y, okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to write our y as g minus 1 of x, and we can write that the other way around if we want. Okay, so I can write that as 2x minus 1 like that, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But that's how we would do it. So we write y instead of the letter. We then rearrange the subject to make x the subject. When we get that, we swap our x and y around, and then you swap your y for the inverse function. I've got another one of these here to show you, because again, this is the way that we would use finding the inverse function, especially when you get on to do A-level maths. Okay, so again, we've got fx equals the square root of 4x minus 1 all over 3. So what I'm going to do to start off with, I'm going to swap that for y, and I'm going to have the square root of 4x minus 1 all over 3. Now, what I want to do is I want to start rearranging to make x the subject. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this by 3. So I times this by 3 to get rid of the fraction, and I get 3y equals the square root of 4x minus 1. And now I want to get rid of the square root, so I'm going to square both sides. If I square both sides, I get 9y squared here, and I get 4x minus 1 here, and then I add 1 equals 4x, and I divide by 4. And I've got 9y squared plus 1 all over 4 equals x. Once I've done that, I do the same things that I've mentioned I was going to do in the last example. So I write it out, I swap x and y. So now I have 9x squared plus 1 all over 4 equals y. And then I write my y as my inverse function. So I've got 9x squared plus 1 all over 4 equals f to the power of minus 1x. And if I want, I can write that the other way around, because I do like my function notation at the beginning. So it is 9x squared add 1 all over 4. Okay. Use this video to complete the questions on page 2 of your knowledge organizer in any Maths Watch work set by a class teacher. Thank you.